Someone like you owns a car like this?
The tall man's voice rang out bitter and sharp as a blade cutting through silence. The words sliced the air, reducing Angela to a single image, a suspect. She didn't scream, didn't fight back. And from that moment, what should have been a small misunderstanding in a parking garage spiraled into a storm, one that would collapse the careers of 2 police officers, spark a report that shook an entire system, and deliver a powerful message about honor, dignity, and truths buried too long finally coming to light. Angela Witford was no ordinary woman. When she stepped out of the annex building of the Pentagon in Arlington after a closed-door meeting on cybersecurity, the rain was still drizzling. She pulled the hood of her coat lower, her mind still lingering on the strategies just discussed. This woman was a general in the United States Army. Yet in this moment, she was simply someone searching for her car keys on the 3rd floor of the Madison Tower parking garage along busy Clarendon Boulevard. Her tall, lean figure moved quickly, the sound of her military boots striking the damp concrete. Then suddenly, a cold voice broke the air behind her. "Freeze! Hands up." 2 police officers emerged, guns drawn, flashlights glaring in her face. One was a large, red-faced white man. The other, younger, clenched his jaw nervously. They didn't see a general. They only saw a suspicious person. Angela calmly raised her hands. "I'm a United States Army general. This is my car." But before she could finish the sentence, a rough hand twisted her wrist and slammed her against a cold concrete pillar. Her purse hit the ground with a heavy thud. Her military ring scraped the wall, leaving a mark. She didn't scream, didn't resist. She only whispered to herself, "Is this really happening?" Her Pentagon-issued ID, complete with name and security barcode, landed right at the officer's feet, but he didn't bother to pick it up. The younger one sneered, "People like you always think you can talk your way out." Each word, "people like you," sent a chill down Angela's spine. She shot him a sharp look and asked, "What exactly do you mean by that?" But there was no reply. Instead, the other officer rummaged through her purse, suspicious of the military laptop embedded with an encrypted chip. Angela didn't shout because she knew better than anyone the truth would surface. She shifted her wrist inside the cuff and pressed a hidden button on her smartwatch. A silent signal transmitted to the Joint Command confirming her identity, location, and status. Within 10 minutes, this parking garage would no longer belong to those 2 officers. Yet, Angela didn't threaten them. She simply said evenly, "You have less than 10 minutes to realize your mistake." To understand the weight of those words, you need to know who Angela was. She wasn't just a name on an ID. She was the product of a journey that began in Mount Bayou, Mississippi, a place her grandfather once called the Black Wall Street, though few remembered it that way. She grew up in a wooden house on stilts, the family refrigerator plastered with honor roll certificates. From her mother, a nurse, and her father, an air conditioning repairman, she learned that pride came not from status, but from the way you faced hardship. Her father prayed his children would never need to wear a uniform. But Angela chose it because she wanted to learn the rules of the world and change them. ROTC carried her from Jackson State to Fort Benning, and from there, her career took off. She was quick, strategic, multilingual, and refused to accept favors simply because she was a black woman in a near-closed system. By the age of 38, she was commanding operations across 4 continents. By 45, she stood before presidents to deliver briefings. But none of those achievements could shield her from suspicion in tonight's parking garage, where 2 uniformed strangers decided she was dangerous. The bitterest part, Angela wasn't surprised. She had seen friends, neighbors, even fellow soldiers go through the same ordeal, all because they looked out of place. She just never thought it would be her turn, and certainly not steps away from a building she had full clearance to enter. Standing in that damp darkness, steel biting into her wrist, Angela understood a deeper truth sometimes. To see a person for who they really are, the light of justice has to come from somewhere else, not from those shining flashlights in your face. On the 3rd floor of the Madison Tower garage, Angela Witford held herself with astonishing calm. The smartwatch on her wrist flickered with a blinking green light, proof that her distress signal had reached Pentagon communications. While the two officers congratulated themselves on their arrest, Angela remained steady, like a chess player who had already anticipated every move. "What are you doing here, lady?" "Snooping around cars," the tall officer sneered. Angela slowly turned her head, her voice low and firm. "You should stop." He let out a mocking laugh. "Is that a threat?" Angela answered simply, "No. It's advice, and you'll regret every word you just said." Her tone wasn't meant to scare him. It was the cold truth of someone who had commanded operations across 4 continents. The man's name was Blake Maddox, a sergeant with 15 years on the force, known for being stubborn and unwilling to accept pushback, especially from women. At his side was Trevor Lang, a nervous rookie caught between the urge to prove himself and the fear of losing control. Neither realized that within minutes, their careers would collapse like chess pieces swept from the board. The entire incident began with a vague phone call. A woman had reported someone suspicious tampering with a car in the garage. No detailed description, no urgent threat, just speculation over the phone. But when Maddox and Lang spotted a black woman in a hoodie standing near a shiny black SUV, they didn't bother to investigate further or check the license plate. Instead, they drew their guns, shackled themselves to prejudice, and followed their worst instincts. Angela didn't panic, she observed. "Do you know what always ruins people?" she asked, eyes still fixed ahead. "Body cameras." Lang froze, instinctively reaching toward his chest. "Sarge, is our body cam on Mad?" X shot him a glance. "Of course. It's mandatory." Angela allowed herself a faint smile. "Good. Then the Department of Defense won't have to rely only on the garage cameras. Your voices will be part of the report, too." For the first time, Lang felt his stomach twist. The word Pentagon from her lips didn't sound like a bluff. Angela pressed on her voice deep and steady. "I commanded Operation Bronze Drift. I briefed 2 presidents directly. In this entire state, only 4 people are authorized to access the data on that laptop, and 2 of them are the Secretaries of Defense." Maddox chuckled, but it was a hollow, forced sound. Angela didn't care whether he believed her. What mattered was the truth. She had been illegally handcuffed, her property searched without a warrant, and above all, 2 police officers had just assaulted a general of the United States Army on federal property. Lang leaned toward Maddox, whispering, "Sarge, maybe we should check her ID." But Maddox's pride wouldn't let him step back. Then footsteps echoed, quick, sharp, unmistakable. Military boots. At the far end of the hallway, 3 men in black suits approached, followed by 2 military police escorting a dark-tinted SUV. Angela exhaled softly. Finally. Lang's face went pale. Maddox froze. The lead man held up a badge, Special Agent Colin Red, Department of Defense. "Release the detainee immediately." Lang stumbled backward, nearly tripping over Angela's purse. Maddox tried to stand his ground, but seconds later the cuffs were unlocked, revealing red welts around Angela's wrist. She didn't complain, didn't flinch. She simply rubbed her joints, eyes locked on Maddox. Agent Red asked, "Are you injured?" Angela replied, "Not physically." The questioning began on the spot. "Did she resist?" Red asked. Lang shook his head. "No," she fully complied. "Did she shout, threaten, or act aggressively?" "No, sir." "Did she identify herself?" Lang nodded slowly. "Yes. She said she was a general." Red stepped closer. "Then why didn't you verify her ID before putting hands on her?" Lang hung his head in silence. Maddox stood motionless, his empty eyes seeming to melt into the concrete wall. Angela finally spoke, her tone steady. This was never about verification. This was about flexing power. Red nodded firmly. Every camera recorded it. The report was transmitted to the Pentagon the moment you triggered your signal. Behind him, the MPs returned her purse and phone. Angela gave her order. "I want a chain of custody established for all evidence, fingerprints, radio logs, dashcam footage, timestamps, audio recordings. Everything." Red responded without hesitation. "You'll have it. A JAG officer is already on the way." It was only then that Maddox stammered. This has to be a joke, right? Angela met his eyes with a cold smile. You're right, this was a joke. Unfortunately, this joke just ended your career. She didn't need to say more. The final blow for Maddox was the end of his career itself. As Agent Red ordered the general into the command vehicle, the two officers were left standing awaiting internal affairs from the Arlington Police Department. Lang swallowed hard, his face drained of color. Maddox's jaw hung open, but no words came out. They had become the central characters of a tragedy they had written themselves. Inside the sleek black SUV, a young communications officer handed Angela a secure phone. General Joint Command is on the line. Angela took it, her voice calm, as if she had never been handcuffed at all. This is General Witford. We have an incident. On the other end, the reply was immediate. We're fully aware. The body cam footage has been extracted and the original call verified. The civilian report was false, but the officer's actions are another matter. Angela spoke with precision. I don't need an apology. I need process. I need a full legal record. The car rolled forward through a light drizzle. Angela leaned back in her seat and closed her eyes. All day long she had maintained an almost icy calm, but now exhaustion crept in. This country, I've given my life to it, yet sometimes it only recognizes me when I flash my military ID, she whispered. But Angela knew well this was only the beginning. Back at her small home in McLean, the porch light flickered. She hung up her uniform coat, poured herself a glass of water, and opened her secure laptop. A preliminary report from the Office of Military Justice was waiting in her inbox. Angela read every line, her eyes sharp and unblinking. Not 10 minutes later, the phone rang. On the other end was Brigadier General Carson Blake, a blunt former Marine who never wasted words. We've got a leak. The press is circling the story about a senior officer mistakenly detained by police. They don't know it was you yet, but they will soon. Angela stood silently in her kitchen. Let them know. Blake didn't press. He simply said if you choose not to file a complaint, the Pentagon will handle it. But remember, we're behind you. Meanwhile, at Arlington headquarters, Maddox and Lang sat in a cramped interrogation room under harsh neon lights. Captain Evan Delgado from Internal Affairs entered carrying a thick file. I'll be direct. Do either of you want to explain why you ignored confirmation of identity from a federal official? Lang stammered. She was in a hoodie. She didn't show ID. Delgado flipped a page. Wrong. She clearly stated her name, rank, presented her card, and cooperated fully. And you ignored it. Maddox growled. She was next to a black SUV who wouldn't be suspicious. Anyone would have done the same. Delgado stared him down. Not me. I read reports. I verify. I don't cuff citizens based on a feeling. The air grew heavy. Maddox snapped. You're turning this into a race issue. Delgado lifted his head, eyes cold. I'm not. But the video is. The words cut like a blade, leaving Maddox speechless. Within 24 hours, the Pentagon's legal division sent an official notice to the Arlington Police Department. The report was airtight, every second recorded. Angela had never raised her voice, never resisted, and repeatedly reminded them of procedure. By Wednesday morning, both Maddox and Lang were suspended. That afternoon, the police chief held a press conference. We take this matter seriously and will fully cooperate with federal investigators. That night, Lang broke down in his garage. He had a wife and a child on the way. He tried to console himself by saying he had just followed orders, but deep down, he knew the truth. He had stayed silent when he should have spoken. Maddox, on the other hand, remained defiant, telling his brother that the whole thing was overblown and that the woman was just making noise. But this time, no one in the department stood by him. The footage spoke for itself. The next day, Angela released a statement only 6 sentences long, yet it shook the nation. I do not ask for special treatment. I only asked to be seen. I complied. And still I was handcuffed, searched, and humiliated simply for existing. This is not just my story. This is the story of those who never had the chance to make a call that could change their outcome. I did. They did not. Her words were not loud, not angry, but their precision and composure made them spread like wildfire. In less than 4 hours, the statement dominated headlines. Morning broadcasts read it in full, and social media swelled with commentary. Other service members, black, brown, and even white, began sharing their own experiences. The story had grown beyond one incident. It revealed a persistent pattern. And this time, the nation had to stop and listen. When Internal Affairs delivered its conclusion, it was as sharp as a guillotine. Sergeant Maddox was recommended for immediate termination. Lang was given a choice: resign quietly or face disciplinary review. He chose resignation. When Angela heard, she didn't cheer, didn't smile, didn't raise a glass. She simply sat on her back porch with her morning coffee, letting silence speak louder than the headlines outside. A few days later, a letter arrived, hand-delivered with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. General Witford, I failed when I did not act. I stayed silent when I should have spoken. I followed instead of questioning. I did not see you, and for that I am deeply sorry. I will carry this weight for the rest of my life. Trevor Lang. Angela folded the letter and placed it in the drawer where she kept old service pins and a photo of her father in uniform. It didn't erase the mistake, but it became part of the record of truth. That evening, Angela joined a virtual session with a class of young cadets. Her face was composed, her tone steady. Remember this, she told them. Your rank may carry weight, but your skin still walks in first. People will judge you before you open your mouth. That isn't your fault. But your responsibility is how you choose to respond. A young female cadet from Tulsa raised her hand. Ma'am, were you afraid? Angela paused, then nodded. Yes, but not for myself. I was afraid that if I lost my composure, I would prove the very lies they believed about me. That weekend, a civil rights organization invited Angela to speak in Dallas. She declined. I don't need a microphone. I need policy training and accountability. Call me when those are in place. Instead of stepping onto a stage, she wrote a brief op-ed for The Hill and met privately with 2 state legislators. No flashbulbs, no cameras, only quiet, deliberate action. Meanwhile, the Arlington Police Union rushed to release a statement. This was a tense situation with no ill intent. Angela read it, closed her laptop, and chose not to respond. She didn't need to. The truth had already echoed far beyond that dark garage. And for many, it was Angela's silence that hit hardest. She hadn't shouted, hadn't begged yet, no one could look away. Weeks later, her life's rhythm returned to normal. Morning strategy meetings, afternoon reviews of operations, late-night calls with international partners. The faint marks of the cuffs still lingered on her wrist. She didn't hide them. They were not just scars of pain, but evidence of resilience. One evening at 9 o'clock, Angela returned to the Arlington garage. She stood by the same concrete pillar beneath the same camera. This time, no shouts, no demands to be searched. She stood still for a moment, then took out her phone and snapped a single picture. Not to post, not to prove anything, just for herself, because that place was no longer only where she had been humiliated. It was also where she refused to let anyone else define her worth. That night, she opened a rarely used notebook and wrote, I followed every rule. I obeyed orders. I earned rank. I gave my service. And still they did not see me, but I saw them, and I will remember. Angela never filed a civil suit, never granted an exclusive interview. But the Arlington Police Department changed. New training programs were added. An independent oversight committee was created for all use of force incidents. Even the recording of that false initial call was added to the Academy's training materials for rookies, because sometimes the lesson is not in the headlines, but in the silence that follows. Angela knew what the world thought power looked like: fine suits, booming voices, rooms heavy with authority. But she also knew there was another kind of power, deeper, quieter, spoken sparingly, and never surrendering the right to define one's own value. That lesson was not just about race, rank, or respect. It was about restraint. Because strength is not always loud, and dignity only shines when someone tries to strip it away. So I leave you with the same question Angela once asked her young cadets. When no one sees you for who you are, what will you do? Will you lash out in anger, or hold steady trusting that truth will speak louder than any words you could say? And if you are the one in uniform, with a gun or authority in your hands, ask yourself, are you listening or only looking? Because the next Angela may not have a smartwatch, may not carry a security badge, and may not have time to call for help. Change must begin now before your silence costs someone their life. If this story moved, you don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear what you think.